Before we start with the hymn, I'd just like to add a notice. When I was here last, if you can remember that long ago, I mentioned a book I'd written. And I said if you wanted a copy, you only had to give Nigel your name. Well, certain people did, and I brought a box of books here. Nigel will have them afterwards. They're free, just take them. I've signed them, so they're very valuable. Nigel has also asked me, invited me, suggested that I tell you why I write books and how I came to do it. I'm sure it won't be any interest to you, but I will tell you. In 1980, I wanted to leave my teaching job, full-time teaching job, but I still had a mortgage to pay. And so for 2 years, I took what's known as secondment. I moved down from my senior post to a middle school on the same wages. And one of the penalties of doing that was I had to teach other subjects. And one of the subjects I had to teach, as well as my own, was history. And the subject was the voyage of the men and women and children who left England and went to Holland in 1620. And in 1620, they went to New England because they didn't want to meet under the rules of the state that were then applying in England, the Pilgrim Fathers. And so I would teach this at school and come home tea time and talking to a tape recorder, and I made up a little story of a certain family, a Lovelace family, a mother and father and 2 children, Justice and Prudence, and I wove the story of the Pilgrim Fathers around this little family. Lady in the church, a fellow elder's wife, typed it up for me, and I sent it off to the Banner of Truth, and to my surprise, they said they would publish it, and that was published in 1984. It's gone into Dutch. It's coming out in a second edition. Whether it's out yet or not, it's coming out in a second edition. It's been reprinted, and the last count, I mean, it must be 40 or 50,000 now, have been sold, which is amazing to me. Well, that was the first publication that came out in 1984. Then, because of that, some people in America bought it, and they got into contact with me, and to cut a long story short, in 1992, my wife and I went over to stay with them for a month. As a result of that, when I was over there, I preached, and I gave a talk on Andrew Fuller. Andrew Fuller was a Baptist, very important in the 1700s, on the free offer of the gospel. That was tape recorded. I sent that to the Banner, and I was invited in 1993 to address the Ministers' Conference, the Banner of Truth, on the subject of the free offer of the gospel, which I did. I was doing some church history talks on a Saturday, and I thought one winter I would do the Puritans. And I started thinking the Puritans were the best thing since sliced bread. But as I taught on the Puritans that winter, I came to see there were big difficulties with the Puritans. And that led me to publish a book on church history. Then my wife died, and I came to live in Biggleswade as a result of, as you know, the hospitality and the kindness of the Pibworths. And during that time, this is now about 1999, 2000, that sort of time, a man called George Ella wrote a book against what I had said at the Banner of Truth conference. It was published in the Banner of Truth magazine. His book was against me, and Nigel kept telling me that I had to reply to him. I put it off, but eventually he wore me down, and I did publish against a reply to George Ella. The gospel offer is free. That was what I published. Then I was visiting a man at Wootton, and he showed me a booklet. And I asked if I could borrow it. And this booklet had just been published through Amazon, the distribution firm. And it was remarkable because you could publish for free, self-publish. So I took this booklet and I looked on the website, and eventually with many blunders, eventually managed to get something published. And once I started, I couldn't stop. It was like John Bunyan, the more I tugged, the more it came. When I was in America once, I was trying to do something on the law with the man in the house where I was staying. I brought it back with me. It was on the Sabbath, actually. But when I got back, I found I couldn't publish on the Sabbath until I did something on the law. And again, Nigel provided me with a huge amount of material. And eventually I published the first book on Amazon, Christ is All, No Sanctification by the Law. And it's gone on and on and on. Last year I decided I would stop. And I stopped for 3 or 4 days, and I just looked at myself and I wondered what I was going to do with my time. And I looked back on my laptop and I found I had some stuff on there and it interested me, and I started looking at that. Started writing another book, in fact. I started writing that book, and that led to publication of a booklet, which I published, was it last year? Yeah, it must have been just last year, at the end of the year. And already it's led to another booklet, which I'm just finishing now, besides the book I'm writing. So it hasn't stopped, but it will stop. It'll have to stop. Why do I publish? Why do I write? Well, my life as a preacher, although it's not been a complete failure, I'd be wrong of me to say it was. It hasn't been completely a failure. It's been disappointing at the best. And as so often with people who have to go through disappointing experiences, they turn to writing. The Puritans did. Bunyan did. There's something about it we want to publish because we feel so frustrated, perhaps. My hope is, I have 2 texts. One is in the end of Colossians, tell Archippus to fulfill his ministry. And that has struck me. If God has something for me to do, I don't want not to do it, if you understand the negative. And the other text is, Christ is all. Christ is all. And I've tried to preach that and tried to write that. If anybody is interested, nobody is, but if anybody is interested in what I've said and you would like to write, my advice to you is don't write a book. Don't try. Don't even try to write a chapter. Don't write a page. Don't write a paragraph. Don't write a sentence. Write a word. Just start and see if it comes. There's no good saying, it's like painting. People say, I can't paint. Have you ever tried? No. I can't write. Have you ever tried? You don't know until you try. But don't try and write a book. Don't try and write a masterpiece. Write a word, and you'll be surprised where you'll end up. Anyway, these books are there. If you've asked for one, it's yours, of course. But even if you haven't asked, you're welcome to take one.
David, what about the 50 years?
Eh?
I never forget you telling me about the 50
Oh, yes, I meant to say that.
Yes.
Yeah, my hope. Yeah, sorry, I meant to say that. I lost my thread there.
I'll give an example of something in history.
Yes, I would have. What Nigel's referring to is, I forgot to say it, I meant to say it. What is my hope in writing? Well, some people at the moment find something. I've got people in Japan, people in Connecticut, people in Canada, and people in this country too. Some people find something. But my hope is that when I'm dead, and that can't be long now, when I'm dead, God may use it, somebody may find it, and use it. That has happened remarkably many times in history. Jane Austen, for example, was not at all popular in her lifetime. It was 100 years probably before her books even really saw the light of day. It was the family thing. They just read it together. But today, of course, anything she wrote is massively important. But it never was at one time. Let me give you an example from another part of the world. Have you ever heard of Lady Lovelace, Ada Lovelace? Probably not. But if you've ever gone on an airplane, you've depended on Ada Lovelace. The landing and the takeoff software at airports is called Ada. And it's after a lady called Ada in the 1800s who worked with Babbage, and she was responsible for the first computer program. People don't know about it. It's not been bothered with, but some people have found it, and it's become very important. What I'm saying is you can never tell. It may be hopeless today, but my hope is that God may use it after I'm gone. And why do I hope that? Because if he granted me success now, it would have thrown me completely off kilter. I don't know how men put up with success. Success must be ruin men. But if God can use my work, if he will, then I won't know anything about it. That's good. But anyway, that's a little bit. That's what I wanted to say. Perhaps we can begin now, shall we?